The rain over Paris fell like cold judgment. Chef Lucien Delacroix stood at the window of his 3-Michelin-star kitchen, Le Cygne Noir, watching the last of the lunch crowd disappear under black umbrellas. He was 52 years old, with silver temples and fingers that had never touched a can opener. His kitchen was a temple of French gastronomy, foams, reductions, soufflés that rose like prayers. And tonight he had agreed to a charity event. A small one. A tasting night where immigrant cooks from around the world would share one dish each. Lucien had laughed when the organizer mentioned a Filipino participant. Filipino cooking? He had said to his sous chef, Pierre. That's not cooking. That's survival on a plate. Rice and desperation. Pierre had chuckled nervously. But someone heard. Someone always hears. The night of the event arrived like a thief. The venue was a community hall near Belleville, far from the glittering towers of Lucien's world. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Folding tables wore white paper cloths. Lucien wore his best suit anyway because he believed in humiliation as an art form. He arrived early, sniffing the air. He smelled ginger, vinegar, garlic, pungent and unfamiliar. His nose wrinkled. Then he saw the Filipino cook. Her name was Imelda Reyes. She was 63 years old, barely 5 feet tall, with arthritis in both knees and a smile that had buried 2 husbands and 1 son. She had worked as a cleaner in Paris for 22 years. At night, she cooked for other Filipino workers. Nannies, construction men, nurses, in a tiny apartment kitchen with a single gas burner. Tonight, she had saved for 3 months to buy a whole pork belly, banana leaves, and a jar of fermented shrimp paste called bagoong. Lucien approached her station. "And what is this?" he asked, loud enough for the small crowd to hear. Imelda looked up. "Pork adobo, sir. But also lechon kawali for crunch. And a side of achara, pickled papaya. My mother's recipe." Lucien picked up a piece of crispy pork with his fingers, no glove, no fork, and bit into it. The skin cracked. The fat melted. The vinegar and soy and garlic hit his tongue like a wave. His eyes betrayed him for half a second. Then he recovered. He chewed slowly, deliberately, and then he did something the room would never forget. He turned to the organizer and said, "This is what happens when a country has no culinary identity. You throw everything into a pot, pork, vinegar, soy sauce, sugar, and call it adobo. It's not technique. It's noise. It's the sound of people who had to make garbage taste edible." The room went silent. Imelda's hands stopped moving. She did not cry. She had stopped crying years ago, after her son's coffin came home from a construction accident in Dubai. Instead, she looked at Lucien with something worse than anger. She looked at him with pity. "Chef," she said softly, "my mother cooked adobo during the war. Japanese soldiers took our rice. She boiled cassava leaves just to fill our stomachs. This recipe is older than your restaurant. It survived. Can your soufflé say the same?" Lucien opened his mouth to answer, but someone else spoke first. A young man stepped forward from the crowd. He was Filipino, maybe 25 years old, with a line cook's tattooed forearms and eyes that burned. His name was Mateo. He worked the night shift at a pizza shop near Gare du Nord, and he had been recording everything on his phone. Mateo had grown up in Manila. His father was a jeepney driver who died of a heart attack at 47. His mother still washed clothes for a living. Mateo had learned to cook from Imelda's YouTube channel. She had 72 subscribers, mostly relatives, and had scraped together enough money for a culinary school in Paris. He had been rejected from every stage in every Michelin kitchen, including Lucien's. Twice. Now he watched the great chef mock the woman who had taught him that burnt garlic was not a mistake but a flavor. Mateo stopped recording. He walked to the front of the room. "Chef Lucien," he said, voice steady, "you said Filipino cooking has no technique. So I challenge you. Tomorrow night, your kitchen. 1 ingredient. You cook your way. I cook mine. 3 judges. Winner takes nothing but respect. If you lose, you apologize to Imelda on camera. If I lose, I leave Paris forever." Lucien laughed. Then he saw the crowd's faces. They were not laughing. He saw Pierre shifting uncomfortably. He saw a journalist from Le Fooding scribbling notes. He saw the Filipino nannies who cleaned the apartments of his wealthy clients. They were all watching. Pride is a funny thing. It can make a man fight a battle he should ignore. "Fine," Lucien said. "Tomorrow. 8 p.m. Bring your rice." He turned and walked out into the rain, but the rain felt different now. Heavier. As if the sky was washing something away. The next 24 hours became a legend whispered through Paris kitchens. Filipino dishwashers told Filipino waiters. Filipino waiters told their French colleagues. Someone posted Mateo's video on TikTok. By morning it had 2 million views. By noon, 5 million. The comments were a war zone. Filipino food is just imitations of Spanish and Chinese. Adobo changed my life in Manila. Lucian is a bully. Mateo is a clown. But the most important comment came from a retired chef named Simone Verdier, the first woman to win 3 Michelin stars in France. She wrote, "I will judge." 2 other judges agreed, a Korean food historian from Sorbonne and a pastry chef from Lyon who had lost her sense of smell but not her taste. Mateo did not sleep. He went to Imelda's apartment. It was a small room under a slanted roof with a hot plate, a rice cooker and a calendar of the Philippine eagle on the wall. "I'm not a chef," Imelda said. "I'm a cleaner who cooks." "You're a chef," Mateo said. "You just never had the door opened for you." She taught him that night. She taught him the secret to her adobo, 12 cloves of garlic, slow-cooked until they were the color of caramel. She taught him that the vinegar must be palm vinegar from a specific province. Her cousin smuggled 2 bottles in a shampoo container. She taught him that the bay leaf must be torn, not cut, because cutting released bitterness. She taught him that love is not a metaphor. It is an ingredient. By dawn, Mateo's hands smelled like soy and gratitude. Meanwhile, Lucian prepared in his gleaming kitchen. He chose turbot, a noble fish, because he wanted to show what technique could do. He would poach it in beurre Monty, serve it on a celeriac puree so smooth it shimmered, and garnish with pickled shallots and a foam of champagne vinegar. It was perfect. It was French. It was safe. But that night, alone in his office, he searched on his phone, Filipino adobo history. He read for 2 hours. He learned about the pre-colonial Filipinos who cooked meat in vinegar and salt to preserve it without refrigeration. He learned about the Chinese traders who brought soy sauce. He learned about the Spanish who added garlic and black pepper. He learned that adobo was not a single dish but a method, a verb, not a noun. He turned off the phone. He did not sleep either. The night of the cook-off arrived. Le Cygne Noir had never seen such a crowd. Filipino nannies sat next to French critics. Construction workers in dusty boots stood beside ladies in fur coats. Imelda arrived in her best dress, a purple turnau with butterfly sleeves she had sewn herself 20 years ago for her son's wedding. She sat in the front row, her hands folded. Mateo stood at a small station that Lucian's team had set up in the corner. It had 1 gas burner, 1 pot, 1 knife. No oven. No sous vide. No pacojet. Lucian's station had 17 different appliances. The judges took their seats. The timer started. 2 hours. Lucian moved like a dancer. His hands were fast, precise, almost cruel. He filleted the turbot in 45 seconds. He started the beurre Monty, butter emulsified with a little water, a trick that kept the fish from drying out. He peeled the celeriac with a mandolin so sharp it seemed to hum. He reduced fish stock with vermouth until it became a glaze that caught the light like amber. Every motion was practiced 10,000 times. This was the difference, he thought, between a civilization and a colony. A civilization builds systems. A colony borrows scraps. He glanced at Mateo. The young man was doing something strange. He was boiling rice. But not plain rice. He had washed it 7 times. Then he had toasted it in a dry pan until it smelled like hazelnuts. Then he had added chicken broth, ginger, and a piece of burnt onion. He was making arroz caldo, or rice porridge. Lucian almost smiled. Porridge? Against turbot? This would be easier than he thought. But Mateo was not done. He had a second burner now. He was rendering pork fat from a piece of belly he had scored in a diamond pattern. The fat spat and crackled. He added garlic. Not 12 cloves. 24. The smell hit the room like a memory. Several people in the audience inhaled deeply. A Filipino nurse closed her eyes. She was thinking of her mother's kitchen in Cebu, of Christmas mornings when the whole family would gather around a single table. That was the thing about Filipino cooking. It did not care about plates. It cared about people. Lucian's turbot was beautiful. It looked like a painting. But Mateo's kitchen smelled like home. The judges noticed. 1 hour left. Lucian began to plate. He arranged the turbot on the celeriac puree with tweezers, each piece exactly 2 centimeters apart. He dotted the champagne foam with a pipette. He placed 3 pickled shallot rings in a perfect triangle. It was flawless. It was also cold. Not in temperature, in spirit. It was a dish that demanded admiration, not love. Meanwhile, Mateo faced a problem. His pork belly was perfect, crisp skin, tender meat, but the arroz caldo needed something. A final punch. He reached into his bag. He pulled out a small jar. Imelda's bagong. Fermented shrimp paste that smelled like the ocean floor and tasted like lightning. He stirred 1 teaspoon into the porridge. Then he added a fried egg on top, sunny side up, edges lacy and brown. Then he crushed chicharron, pork cracklings, over everything like confetti. The dish was ugly. It was glorious. It was chaos made delicious. Time was called. The judges approached Lucien's plate first. Simone Verdier took a bite. She chewed slowly. She nodded. Perfect technique, she said. The turbot is a whisper. The celeriac is velvet. But, she paused. It is safe. It is what I expected from a French chef. It does not surprise me. The Korean historian tried it. Very clean, she said. Very precise. But precision without risk is just repetition. The pastry chef took a bite and said nothing. She wrote something on her notepad. Then they approached Matteo's station. He had plated the arroz caldo in a deep bowl, the golden egg yolk still runny, the chicharron still crackling, the bagong sending up a funky fermented perfume that made some people lean back and others lean in. Simone took a spoonful. She closed her eyes. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I am tasting my childhood. But I am not French. I am tasting something else. A memory that is not mine. How did you do that? Matteo said, Chef, in the Philippines we don't cook for critics. We cook for people who are tired. Who are sad. Who have lost someone. This porridge is what my mother made me when I had a fever. It is what Imelda made for her son's funeral. It is food that says, you are not alone. Simone put down her spoon. She looked at Lucien. Lucien's face was pale. He knew. He had known since the first smell of burnt garlic. Technique without heart is just choreography. And no one dances alone forever. The judges conferred for 7 minutes. The room was so quiet you could hear the rain starting again outside. Then Simone stood up. We have a decision, she said. Chef Lucien's turbot is a masterpiece of French technique. It earns 18 out of 20 from each of us. That is a near-perfect score. Murmurs. Hope flickered on Lucien's face. But, Simone continued, Matteo's arroz caldo earned 19, 19 and 20. One perfect score. Because taste is not just about the tongue. It is about the chest. It is about the knot in your throat when you remember someone you loved. Matteo's dish made 3 strangers feel like family. That is not cooking. That is alchemy. Matteo wins. The Filipino crowd erupted. Not politely. Not with restrained applause. They screamed. They hugged. An old man took off his slipper and waved it in the air, a sign of ultimate victory in Philippine basketball culture. Imelda did not scream. She sat very still. Then she stood up. She walked past the judges, past the cameras, past the stunned French waiters in their white aprons. She walked up to Lucien. He was standing alone by his plating station, his hands hanging empty. She took his hand. His hand was cold. Chef, she said, my son died building a skyscraper in Dubai. He was 24. He used to call me every Friday and ask for my adobo. I could not send it to him. So I sent him recipes. He never learned to cook them. He died before he could try. She paused. You have a daughter, yes? I read about her. She is a lawyer in Lyon. When was the last time you cooked for her? Lucien did not answer. His jaw trembled. He looked at the floor. Then he looked at the crowd. He saw Pierre. He saw the journalist. He saw the Filipino nannies who cleaned his clients' homes. He saw Matteo still crying over his pot. And for the first time in 30 years, Chef Lucien Delacroix, the terror of Le Cygne Noir, the man who had made apprentices weep, began to cry. Not a single tear. A full breakdown. His shoulders heaved. He wiped his face with his sleeve like a child. I am sorry, he said. His voice cracked. I am so sorry. He turned to Imelda. You are not a cleaner who cooks. You are a chef who cleans because the world is cruel. And I added to that cruelty. I mocked your food because I was afraid. Afraid that everything I built was just decoration. Imelda did not say, I forgive you. Not yet. Forgiveness is not a button. It is a wound that heals from the edges inward. She said, then cook with us. Tomorrow. My apartment. 1 hot plate. You bring the fish. I'll bring the vinegar. Let's make something new. Lucien nodded. He could not speak. The cameras caught everything. By midnight the video had 50 million views. Headlines screamed, French chef weeps after losing to Filipino grandma. Turbot versus porridge, the upset of the century. Colonialism on a plate. But the real story was smaller. It happened the next evening in Imelda's cramped room under the slanted roof. Lucien arrived with a turbot. Not a perfect one from his supplier. He had bought it from a market in Belleville, the same market where Imelda bought her pig's feet and bitter melon. He wore no chef's jacket. Just a sweater. Mateo was there. So were 5 Filipino nannies, 2 construction workers and a retired nurse. They pushed the bed against the wall. They set up a folding table. They cooked for 6 hours. Lucien learned to crush garlic with the flat of a knife. He learned that burnt rice is not a mistake but a delicacy called tutong. He learned that fish sauce and vinegar can become something transcendent if you add a little sugar and patience. And Imelda learned that beurre Monty is just butter and water trusting each other. They made adobo that night. But not pork adobo. They made turbot adobo. Lucien's fish, poached in Imelda's vinegar with Mateo's garlic, and a splash of fish sauce from the nurse's hometown. They served it over tutong. It was ugly. It was beautiful. It was a dish that had never existed before and would never exist again. And when they ate it, sitting on plastic chairs and an overturned laundry basket, no one took a photo. No one posted it. They just chewed, and swallowed, and smiled. Because that is what food is for. Not for winning. For being human. But stories like this do not end in kitchens. They end in consequences. The next morning Lucien resigned from Le Cygne Noir. He did not announce it. He simply left his keys on the pass and walked out. Pierre found them 3 hours later. The news spread faster than the video. Some called him a coward. Others called him a hero. He did not care. He started showing up at Imelda's apartment every Tuesday. He taught her to make a proper omelette. She taught him to make sinigang, a sour tamarind soup that he said tasted like regret and hope at the same time. Within a month they had a following. Not online. In real life. Filipino workers started bringing their French neighbors. French neighbors started bringing their friends. Imelda's hot plate became 2 hot plates. Then 3. Then a second-hand stove. 6 months later they opened a small restaurant. Not in the center of Paris. In Belleville where the rent was cheap and the memories were real. They called it Tutong. The sign was hand-painted by Mateo. The menu had 6 items. All of them were ugly. All of them were delicious. The critics came back. This time they wrote different words. The most honest food in Paris. A lesson in humility served with rice. Michelin should be afraid. But Lucien and Imelda did not read reviews. They worked the lunch service together, side by side, a silver-haired Frenchman and a tiny Filipina in a purple apron. They argued about garlic. They laughed about burnt rice. They served everyone, the nanny, the banker, the homeless man who slept in the metro, the same portion. No favorites. No phones. But tragedy does not ask for permission. 1 year after the cook-off, Imelda Reyes was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She was given 3 months. She lasted 4. Mateo was holding her hand when she died. Lucien was in the kitchen, preparing her favorite dish, pork adobo with extra burnt garlic, for her dinner. She never ate it. He put the plate on her empty chair and sat across from it. He did not cry. He had no tears left. He just sat there until the adobo grew cold. Then he wrapped it and put it in the refrigerator. He never threw it away. The restaurant stayed open. Mateo became head cook. Lucien stayed as his sous chef, a title that made him happier than any star ever had. The funeral was in a small Filipino church near Belleville. The priest spoke in Tagalog. Lucien understood none of it. But he understood the crying. He understood the way Mateo's shoulders shook. He understood the old Filipino men who carried Imelda's coffin. She had no sons left, so they carried her instead. After the burial, everyone went back to Tutong. They ate adobo. They drank rum. They told stories about Imelda, how she once fed a family of Syrian refugees from her hot plate, how she never learned to read French but could smell when a pot was about to burn from across the room, how she had no money but always had food. Lucien stood by the door, greeting every person who came in. He did not speak much. He just nodded. He just served. 3 years later, Tutong received a letter. Not a review. A notification. The Michelin Guide had awarded them a star. Mateo read the letter 3 times. Then he burned it in the sink. She would have hated this, he said. Lucien nodded. Then let's give it back. They did not return the star. They ignored it. They did not hang it on the wall or print it on the menu. They just kept cooking. The guide sent inspectors again. The food was the same. Ugly. Honest. Delicious. The star stayed. But the sign above the door never mentioned it. The sign just said Tutong. And underneath, in smaller letters, burnt rice. Burnt pride. Burnt love. Everything is okay. But the end of this story is not in Paris. It is in a small barangay in the Philippines in the province of Pampanga, where Imelda was born. 1 year after her death, Lucien sold his apartment. He took the money and flew to Manila. Then he took a bus for 6 hours. Then a tricycle for 1 hour. Then he walked 2 kilometers in the mud. He found Imelda's childhood home, a nipa hut with a corrugated roof, surrounded by coconut trees. An old woman sat on the bamboo steps. It was Imelda's older sister, Lida. She was blind. "You're the French chef," she said. "She wrote about you." Lucien knelt in the mud. "I'm sorry I never met you sooner." Lida laughed. "Come inside. I'll teach you to cook her adobo. The real one. The one she never taught anyone." He stayed for 3 months. He learned to cook over wood fire. He learned to pound garlic with a stone mortar. He learned that the best vinegar comes from the sap of a coconut flower, and that you have to wait for it to ferment in a clay jar for at least 40 days. He learned that adobo is not a recipe. It is a conversation between the cook and the fire. And when he finally returned to Paris, he brought back a jar of Lida's vinegar. He placed it on the counter of Tutong, next to a photo of Imelda. The photo shows her in her purple turno, holding a wooden spoon, smiling like she knows a secret. The secret is this: you cannot mock a people's food without mocking their dead. And the dead have long memories. Tonight, if you walk into Tutong, you will see Lucien at the stove. He is 71 now. His hands shake. But he still fries garlic until it is the color of caramel. You will see Mateo, now 32, running the pass with the calm of a man who has nothing to prove. You will see Filipino nannies and French lawyers and students and plumbers all sitting at the same plastic tables. And if you ask Lucien about that night, the night he mocked Filipino cooking, he will stop stirring. He will look at the photo of Imelda. He will say, "I was a fool. I thought cooking was about winning. She taught me it is about staying. Staying when it is hard. Staying when you are tired. Staying when the person you are cooking for is already gone." Then he will serve you a bowl of arroz caldo. The egg will be runny. The chicharron will be crunchy. And you will taste something you cannot name. It will feel like forgiveness. It will feel like home. The rain over Paris falls the same as it always has. Cold. Indifferent. But inside Tutong it is warm. The steam from the rice pots fogs the windows. Someone is singing a karaoke song in Tagalog. Someone else is crying into their beer. And somewhere, in a province across the ocean, under a coconut tree, a blind old woman is laughing because she knows the truth. The French chef did not save Filipino cooking. Filipino cooking saved the French chef. And that is the thing about food. It does not care about your passport. It does not care about your stars. It only cares if you are hungry. And everyone at the end of the day is hungry for the same thing. To be seen. To be fed. To be loved before the fire goes out.